Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and I believe I'm about to open your eyes again, okay? Now, from now on, every video I watch going forward, I want you to think about this diagram that we went over in yesterday's video, okay? I want you to be thinking about the evolution of how Ripple and how R3 and Bitcoin's invented. Then you have Ripple, R3 born, then SBI Ripple Asia, SBI Japan buys a piece of Ripple, and then the formation of, and then ILP here, and then 2025, blockchain solutions for capital markets and trade finance emerge, right? And then I want you to be thinking about the biggest of pictures, which is this final picture. This is where it all ends, folks. This is the big kahuna right here, XRP ledger and all the money, okay? Now, what I want you to think about here for a minute, and then I'm going to show you what I'm going to show you. What is the one thing that we have heard over and over and over and over about what has to happen before this industry can really blossom, and before traditional financial firms and their retail investors as well and institutional can really get involved? The word is custody. Now, for those of you that are listening to my voice that don't know what custody means, I'm going to spell it out for you. When I was a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley, I learned what custody meant. What custody means is, and for years, decades, you've been able to buy stocks from a broker or a financial advisor. You can buy a stock in, say, Facebook, and you have operated on the assumption that you don't have to worry about physically holding that share of stock. Someone who, in the case of Wall Street, for decades now, you have trusted that the custody of that stock is going to be taken care of. In other words, you don't have to have that in your house or in your safety deposit box. You've trusted Wall Street and specific companies, I think the largest of which is State Street. These companies literally custody trillions, if not quadrillions of dollars of stocks. They take care of it so that you don't have to worry about it. And that's what makes their industry scalable. That's what makes their industry legitimate. That's what makes Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, and all of those companies able to make trillions of dollars in this industry. That's what makes the industry, is the idea that you out there as retail or institutional investors trust these people and these custody solutions. And so custody has been at the core of what this has all been about. With no custody, in other words, it's not okay for exchanges to be hacked and people to lose their digital assets. There has to be a custody solution that is on par with the same way it's been done with stocks for the last, 100, 200 years, okay? It has to be that way to have an industry, all right? Now, my father watched my video from yesterday, and he called me this morning, and he's the official father of the Digital Asset Investor channel. And he was literally almost giddy, and he, for the first time since we started talking about Ripple and XRP in 2013, both he and I finally came to our enlightened moment. We finally both synced up, and he finally got it. But the one thing he wanted me to do, and he asked me to do it, he said, Digital Asset Investor, but he called me by my name. He said, can you draw me a chart? He said, I don't understand. How does SBI Holdings fit in R3 and all that? And I went through it all. He said, will you draw me a chart? Well, I haven't drawn that chart, but I've pieced it all together for you all, just so that you can understand. And in the process of piecing it all together, a few things jumped off, okay? I'm about to show you those few things. Here we go. And remember, against this backdrop, there are a handful of companies from traditional finance that have been the go-to places for custody worldwide for the custody for the traditional financial markets in stocks and all other sorts of things. So here we go. But it's all against the backdrop of this, and it's also all against the backdrop of all the money. Okay? Now, let's start here. We're going to start with Ripple. I believe Ripple is going to change the entire global financial system. I agree with Naveen Gupta. Ripple's either going to go away or they're going to put a dent in the universe. I believe that it's going to be a dent in the universe. And I believe that dent in the universe is going to greatly affect the price of XRP in a positive way. I believe that R3 is also an important, very important part of this. And I believe that these two companies are about to completely change the world. So, the first thing that you need to understand is that, and this is what tells the story, SBI Holdings in 2016, they bought 10.5% of Ripple. And my father, the official father of the Digital Asset Investor channel, wanted me to really lay this out for him and show him, well, okay, so SBI Holdings they're the largest outside shareholders of R3. They're also the largest outside shareholders of Ripple. So it's got to be bigger than this, right? It's got to be, there have to be other players involved because it's not just SBI Holdings. We've tracked in the last couple of videos, SBI Holdings and Japan. This goes all the way up to the top of the Japanese government in terms of being a part of all of this. Okay, we showed that yesterday. But what about SBI Holdings? I mean, they bought 10.5% of Ripple. Who owns SBI Holdings? We know Yoshitaka Kitao is the CEO of SBI Holdings, but who owns? A better question. Who are the key players from traditional finance that we've been talking about for the last 2 years? What has to happen? Custody. So who owns SBI Holdings? I decided to look, and I don't know if I've ever looked. Maybe I have, but I've never pieced it together the way I'm piecing it together today. Here are the top holders, and I'm not interested in the Japanese. We already know this goes up all the way to the top of the Japanese government. But who owns? Who are the top owners from the U.S. especially of SBI Holdings? Northern Trust Company, the Bank of New York Mellon, and State Street Bank. Okay, now I know who those people are, but I'm going to show you all who they are. Let's start with the Bank of New York Mellon. BNY Mellon is the world's biggest global custodian for 8th straight year. For the 8th year in a row, BNY Mellon takes the #1 spot in the Institutional Investor's annual ranking of the world's largest global custodians. The firm's total assets under custody climbed to roughly $25.08 trillion for the 12 months through June, according to estimates from an estimated $24.31 trillion the previous year. Ooh, you'll never guess who's in second place. State Street Corporation, the #2 custodian. Okay, but let's look at BNY Mellon. Let's just stay focused on them. This was from November 14th, 2016. BNY Mellon reinventing payments. In a recent report titled Reinventing Payments in an Era of Modernization, Worldwide Banking and Financial Services Corporation, BNY Mellon, evinces a cautious optimism about distributed ledger technology. The report points out the challenges in the current payments infrastructure, risk, end-to-end cost, timeliness, customer experience, transparency, and managing information every step of the way. I want to draw your focus to the last part of this. Similarly, regulatory engagement will require the creation of rules and guidance to govern market participants as the technology evolves to serve the market. On the subject of standards, BNY Mellon points out that Ripple has made a major stride in providing a standard to enable payments across payment networks, Interledger, while various organizations and consortiums are working on blockchain standards. R3, Hyperledger, as previously described. There is yet no true blockchain standard, which also impedes progress. Ripple's interledger protocol aims to solve this challenge by enabling diverse ledgers to seamlessly interact with each other. I will draw your attention back to the comments of Glenn Hutchins, who is on the board of directors at the Digital Currency Group. He said that what matters is the protocol. The prices are a distraction. Meanwhile, you have all of these traditional custodians. They know that custody is what's important. So what do? They buy into SBI Holdings. They are some of the top holders of SBI Holdings. SBI Holdings buys Ripple and buys R3 because they know that this is where the protocol is going to be controlled from. Now, I'm just going to drip a few more things on you about BNY Mellon. I always thought it was weird that the Mellon banking heirs new crypto fortune. Remember this guy? This is the guy that died of an overdose or something like that, and he supposedly died and had lost his keys. But I only wanted to show you this to show you that, do you think this guy just out of nowhere finds out about XRP and says, hey, I think I'll buy a bunch of this XRP stuff? No. This guy, this article, let's see when this is from 2018, and this is about the former chair, let's see, has struggled with drug addiction. So when he began dabbling in this, this is talking about how, I think this is before he died, but this is 2018. So 2016, SBI buys into Ripple and R3. And then all of a sudden, the largest custodian in the world, BNY Mellon, one of the heirs, is buying XRP. Okay, now this was just by pure coincidence while I was putting this video together. This is sent to me by Matthew Liney. BNY Mellon, 5 reasons to tokenize. And this is a report from BNY Mellon. And this doesn't really have anything to do with me showing these ownerships. This just happened to land in front of me while I was preparing this video. Aerial view, BNY Mellon. This is an entire document about tokenization. And if you want to see what your world is going to look like, and trust you me, the XRP ledger will be involved in this. For sale. Imagine the tokenization of apartment buildings, tokenized it into a digital asset and then trading on exchanges. The world becomes totally liquid. And a lot of this is done on the XRP ledger. These people know, they know. Next, let's go to Northern Trust. Remember, Northern Trust is the top. They are the top of the American holders of SBI Holdings. Let's take a look at Northern Trust. It's a financial services company headquartered in Chicago, Illinois. That just happens to be where Miguel Valles was with the CME group at the head of the trading desk before he left there to go to this little startup called Ripple in San Francisco. Northern Trust is a financial services company headquartered in Chicago, Illinois that caters to corporations, institutional investors, and ultra high net worth individuals. It is one of the largest banks in the United States and one of the oldest banks in continuous operation. As of December 31st, that is 2018, it had 1.07 trillion in assets under management and 10.13 trillion assets under custody. Northern Trust Corporation is incorporated in Delaware. So another one of the largest custodians in traditional finance. Do you think these custodians saw all this forming or actually had a part in the formation of all of this? And then finally, there's State Street. State Street's my favorite because we've talked about it before. It's an American financial services and bank holding company headquartered at 1 Lincoln Street in Boston with operations worldwide. It is the second United States bank on the list of the oldest banks. Now, so what you're seeing here, folks, you're seeing the oldest banks, the oldest in traditional finance, the oldest in custody. These are the guys that make you trust Wall Street. And these are the guys who saw it. These are the guys, I don't think they just saw it. I think they formed it. It looks better to have come out of Japan too, by the way. Now, it says here, it is one of the largest asset management companies in the world with 2.511 trillion under management and $31.62 trillion under custody and administration. It is the second largest custodian bank in the world to BNY Mellon, who is also an investor in SBI Holdings, which is also an investor in Ripple and R3. And then I'm going to close this out by showing you 3 videos to help you tie all this together. This is from Stewart XRP 2018, corporate hedging. Just watch the video, you'll get it.
So what kind of variables impact a really...
By the way, this is Catherine Coley before she goes to start Binance.us to become a legitimate U.S. crypto platform.
Liquid and robust, healthy market, and what would that look like for digital assets?
Great question. The components that kind of take place in a market include the infrastructure layer, and then as well the speculators, the liquidity providers, and then corporate hedging. That's huge in the FX market, which allows for two-way flow to occur. And that's really kind of the fundamental difference that digital assets currently are missing.
Liquidity is one of the significant hurdles for institutional adoption of crypto assets, broadly speaking. So when you think about, very traditional asset managers entering the space, they're all very interested. They're all doing their homework. They're constantly engaging and wanting to find ways to invest. But until they see deep liquid two-way markets and know how they can manage their risk efficiently, they're not going to enter, and certainly not in size. And so the development of derivatives and deeper liquid markets and hedging instruments is a very important strategic step towards institutional adoption.
See Polyson custody hedging. Okay, and now I want you to see this from Stewart XRP. Watch this one. Now remember, the backdrop to this is, we've been talking about how Ripple all of a sudden declares 2020 the year of the digital asset. How can they do this? They wouldn't declare that based on they think speculators are coming in. They would declare it because they have a level of confidence that they know that's the only way they do it. So this was around Christmas time when we started hearing some of this bold talk. Here we go.
What do you sort of expect from blockchain digital assets next year and maybe even in the next 10 years?
Yeah, so to the point about Wall Street and some of the, evolution there, I think in the next year or 5 years, I think we will see more traditional banks legging into the space a little bit more aggressively than they have in the last 12 or 24 months. Not just on the blockchain technology side, so not just using blockchain technology to improve efficiencies on, say, trade settlement or reducing fees around broken trades, etc., but actually thinking about using digital assets, building sales and trading desks, building custody platforms, building prime brokerage platforms, full service suite offerings around digital assets. In addition, I think we might see central banks with greater adoption rates around the concept of using digital assets as reserve currencies. And then I think we will see derivatives markets start to explode in 2020 and beyond. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the derivatives markets outpace spot by 2x by the end of 2020. And then to an earlier point I raised around some of the activity we've seen in consolidation on the exchange space, Binance as an example I cited, I think we'll continue to see much further consolidation on the exchange side and within the OTC universe, and we'll start to see clear leaders emerge within the space.
Okay, folks, and finally, I want to end by showing you this video, 2017, Miguel Baez. And I want you to listen. He mentions in this video the name of the second largest traditional custodian in the world. Listen.
The first step to custody, because there is no recourse if your assets disappear from your wallets, is insurance, right? If somebody's willing to insure those losses, then that can get larger financial institutions, I think, more comfortable with the idea of custodying the assets. I think also it's interesting, there are folks looking at this, right? I mean, Gemini custodies and IPIT custodies and Kingdom Trust custodies. So it's not like no one is doing it, right? But we've yet to have kind of, Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley or State Street, Boney. These guys have not jumped in yet, even though that you hear whispers and rumors that people are looking. But one of my jobs is to, again, create this liquidity pool for XRP and build a big capital market around it, because without liquidity, we can't fund, we can't create the liquidity that you need for funding payments through some of the products that we're building. But even if you had, and I know it's all kind of chicken and egg, but even if you had the prime brokerage model and you wanted to offer leverage to your clients, that means that you now have to go out there and source a bunch of Bitcoin or Ether or XRP, and that's not easy to do, right? I think one of the advantages that...
By the way, I'm about to finish this video, but my yard man just showed up. So you're going to hear a lawnmower and possibly a blower. So let's see if we can finish this up without being too interrupted. But if we are, we are.
We have as a company is the fact that we sit on 60 billion XRP. So the day that Goldman wants to open up their trading desk, they don't have to go find, XRP. They just give me a call, which is nice. I think it's... And, interest rates in this market are pretty expensive, so it's a nice recurring revenue stream one day. So but that is a problem. That needs to be solved somehow, right? Because you can't just have one person doing it. Because truthfully what happens is that Goldman borrows from Morgan, that borrows from Deutsche, that borrows from Credit Suisse, and it's a little bit of ring around the rosy, and they all end up borrowing from a central bank. We are using it for investments, right? So we are funding other companies with our XRP. You'll hear some stuff about that as well. But really, we don't want to get rid of all of it because we do feel like being maybe a primary lender in the market will be helpful as we try to build liquidity in this.
So anyway, you heard him in there talking about custody. Now, I'm going to recap here before I finish this video, and I want to round all this out. So you got these two companies, these two startup companies. You got Ripple, you got R3. SBI Holdings is the largest outside shareholder in these two companies that are about to change the world. The largest holders at least from America in SBI Holdings all just happen to be the traditional, some of the largest top three custodians from traditional asset management or from traditional custody solutions in the traditional financial markets. State Street, Northern Trust, and BNY Mellon. And then just to give you a little cherry on top, we've shown this before, but I'll show it again. Just to give you a little cherry on top, I'll give you this. The Rothschild, this is from XRP Darren. This is the Edmund de Rothschild Fund, the Rothschilds being the most wealthy family, I think, in the history of the world and currently in the world. This is from Luxembourg, which we've shown you many pictures of Ripple with the finance ministers from Luxembourg over the last year or so. This is their annual report and audited financial statements from 2018. Portfolio review, the fund delivered a solid performance in this environment. And the key contributors, it says SBI Holdings. The underlying equity rallied over 60% during the period as the company was caught up in the optimism surrounding cryptocurrencies. SBI owns a 8.7% stake in Ripple's XRP. With the volatility and underlying equity rising in the company's 2017 CB converted, the CB is also risen strongly. So it's good to know that our cherry on top, the Rothschild family, is doing well and has their stake in SBI Holdings as well. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell your friends and family that it's a good thing that the Rothschild family, as well as the largest custodians from traditional finance, are invested in SBI so that they can benefit from what happens with Ripple, R3, and XRP. Thank you for listening.